Tonight, preparing for devastation.
It's gonna hit the radio tower. Go.
Large and extremely dangerous tornadoes touched down in Arkansas and Mississippi, wreaking havoc, damaging winds, large hail, and more hitting millions. We'll have a report from the ground. Plus,
I will tell you, I think that what this has done is made him the absolute nominee for the Republican Party in 2024.
Donald Trump becomes the first current or former U.S. president to ever be indicted, and soon he'll be the first to be arraigned. What happens next and how members of his own party are reacting. And
I want to show my son that if you want to fight for something, you can do it.
She worked for the biggest coffee chain in the world and took her union fight to Capitol Hill. We follow one Starbucks barista alleging the company repeatedly violated labor laws and hear from the billion-dollar company's former CEO. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mona Kosar Abdi in for Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We are following those stories, including the extreme weather that has already hit parts of the South and much more, including what the Vatican is now saying about the health of the Pope. Plus, Gwyneth Paltrow victorious after that weeks-long ski crash trial. We bring you what one of the jurors in the trial had to say about what happened behind closed doors. And Oscar Pistorius tries a last-ditch effort for parole, the decision handed down. Our correspondents are fanned across the country covering those stories and more for us tonight. But we do begin with the 80 million Americans facing the threat of severe weather, and it could be a very long night ahead for residents in the South all the way up to Wisconsin. Late today, the National Weather Service warned residents of Little Rock of catastrophic tornado. Soon after the twister arrived, you can see a massive cloud headed towards Little Rock. And tonight, officials in Arkansas are reporting a significant number of injuries. You can see a shopping center damaged. All this comes as President Biden visited Mississippi today and warned that some of the communities hard hit last Friday are under threat again this Friday. We've also learned of a tornado touching down near Memphis, Tennessee tonight. Rob Marciano is tracking where the severe weather is headed and the tornado risk. But first, Victor Oquendo reports from Memphis.
Tonight, the tornado emergency unfolding in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Take your tornado precautions now. You're looking live right now, north of Little Rock. That is the lowering, and there's a tornado in there. This is not a drill. This is confirmed.
It's gonna hit the radio tower. Go.
Storm chasers tracking the massive, fast-moving twister as it heads into the north side of the city of 200,000 people. This neighborhood taking a direct hit, downing trees, shearing roofs, splintering homes, and tossing vehicles everywhere. Little Rock's fire chief telling ABC News there are significant injuries.
The ambulances are pretty constant as they're getting called out here to search through these homes.
Meteorologists at our ABC affiliate KATV watching as the tornado tracks through their hometown, overcome with emotion.
We have friends and family who have been affected by this, that homes have been destroyed. And so if there's hesitation, we're trying to keep our composure, too.
As this plays out in Little Rock, President Biden on the ground today in Rolling Fork, Mississippi, where they are still recovering from a deadly tornado outbreak that hit 1 week ago today.
This community is going to be rebuilt and built back better than it was before.
Parts of the same area at risk once again tonight.
And Victor Oquendo joins us from Memphis. Victor, what are you experiencing there right now, and what do you expect as the night goes on?
Mona, we are in a high-risk area here in Memphis tonight, and just minutes ago, a confirmed tornado touched down northwest of us. It is going to be so important for everyone to listen to any weather alert as we're under a particularly dangerous tornado watch that stretches well into the night. Mona?
Victor Oquendo, thank you. And now to ABC senior meteorologist Rob Marciano. Rob, the situation right now is fluid, but will this threat continue through the night?
Yeah, it's going to, Mona, through at least 1 in the morning. And given what we've already seen today, it's going to be a dangerous night ahead for millions of Americans. By the way, that tornado that's on the ground just north of Memphis, that was the same cell that went through northern Little Rock just a couple of hours ago and did all that damage. And, of course, we have damage and tornadoes that dropped in parts of eastern Iowa. And now that's really another point where we're really worried. By the way, blizzard warnings on the northern fringe of this thing, southern Minnesota back through the Dakotas. But obviously the most dangerous aspect of this are these thunderstorms that are producing tornadoes, and the watch is up from Mason City to Milwaukee, Chicago, back through Springfield, Paducah, all the way down just east of Dallas. And a watch has just been extended now to include Nashville until 1 o'clock in the morning. And that's a PDS watch, a particularly dangerous situation. That's a pretty rare watch for the SBC to issue. Also rare are these pink areas, high risk day. I think it's been like 2 years since I've seen this. They don't issue them often, and this one, unfortunately, is verifying in the way of tornadoes touching the ground and doing damage. Here's our future radar on our computer model showing you how all these individual storms will line up as they press across the Tennessee Valley. 2 in the morning, they get through Nashville. Hopefully no more damage there, but these things hold together pretty well until they get to the northeast. A shock coming through in the morning, and then another one coming through late in the day, and that will have some upper level energy to it. Look at the bright spots there right around dinner time. And now the SBC has issued a severe threat with a yellow area from Pittsburgh to Baltimore, New York, Boston, Albany. Damaging winds, large hail, a tornado not out of the question here either. So whether you live in the Northeast or in the Midwest storm zone tonight, you've got to have a safety plan and be ready to act on it when these warnings do fall. Mona?
All right, Rob Marciano staying on top of the severe weather threat for us. Thank you. And there will undoubtedly be a lot of work to do on the ground in Arkansas. And for more on that, we are joined by Latricia Woodruff, Public Information Officer for the Arkansas Division of Emergency Management. Now, Latricia, there have been multiple tornadoes reported on the ground in the state today. Were you guys prepared for so much activity? And do you have any idea how many tornadoes touched down?
At this point, I don't know how many tornadoes have touched down. We're continuing to get reports. Just recently, I got information that Wynne, Arkansas, in Cross County, possibly struck by a tornado, homes damaged, power lines down, and possibly some people trapped in their homes. We had no way of really knowing exactly how widespread this would be and how much damage it was going to be. But we tried to get information out that this storm system was coming and to help people to pay attention and know that they need to take some precautions when necessary. So we had no idea that it would be this much damage that we're seeing right now. At this point, we have heard about injuries, but we don't have a count on any injuries at this time. But there's a lot of homes that have been damaged, other structures. We heard about a fire station here in Little Rock that had some damage to it as well. Some interstate, portions of interstate closed down because of debris in this area as well. So we're telling people, once the storm goes through, you still need to be very careful when you're getting out. You don't want to go across town to help someone out because you don't know what lies in your pathway to get there, and we don't want you to create more danger. First responders are out doing everything that they can, and they're going to attend to the folks who have been impacted by this.
And hopefully folks heed those warnings. And we've seen those devastating images from Little Rock across the state. What's your take on the extent of the damage and how many could be injured?
We don't have that information right now, but when you look at that damage, you have to think that there are some folks who've been injured. So we are kind of waiting to see what that number will be. We hope that it's not a large number of people and that the folks who may have been injured are being taken care of. But when you look at that damage, it's hard to think that, we could get any good news out of this.
Latricia, I know you said that the extent of the damage is unknown, but do you guys have a response plan to help those in the areas that were hardest hit? And do you know how soon that they will start getting help?
First responders are out there right now lending, a helping hand to the folks who have been impacted by this. We just got word that the National Guard is planning to go out as well. Our governor actually signed a declaration that releases emergency funds so that our division can assist those cities and counties that may need some help with cleaning up from this and just going out and taking care of this situation. Right now we have some more damage that was reported here. I'm looking off to the side. My assistant here is giving us some more information. Just they're opening some shelters at this time in some areas. For anyone who needs to go to a shelter, just call your sheriff's department or your local emergency management department for that information.
Yeah, the situation developing in real time as we see there. But lastly, really quickly, what would you say to someone who needs help and has lost their home? How do they reach out for help?
What they need to do at this point is to call their city or county, get in touch with them, let them know that they have some damage there. If their power line's down and they've lost power, they need to call their electric company. Those folks are in their communities right now, and they are going to be their first line of defense and trying to work on recovering from this.
All right, Latricia Woodruff, thank you so much for your time. We hope you, your family, and your colleagues are staying safe.
Thank you.
And now to the other major news this evening on the unprecedented indictment of former President Trump by a Manhattan grand jury. Sources tell ABC News he could surrender to authorities as soon as Tuesday. The exact charges are still not known, but they are linked to hush money payments to adult movie star Stormy Daniels just before the 2016 election. But sources say there could be about 24 charges. ABC's senior investigative reporter Aaron Katersky has the latest.
Tonight, sources tell ABC News former President Donald Trump will surrender to authorities in New York on Tuesday and be booked at the courthouse as a criminal defendant. Until then, the indictment against him remains sealed, but sources familiar with the case tell us Trump is facing around 24 counts, including felonies, stemming from a $130,000 hush payment to porn actress Stormy Daniels in the closing weeks of the 2016 campaign.
Did you know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels?
At first, Trump denied knowing about the payment, but later admitted he did. And his legal team now claims he arranged it not to protect his campaign, but to protect his family. It's not the only hush payment the grand jury heard about. Sources tell ABC News prosecutors also presented evidence of a $150,000 payment to a second woman, Playboy model Karen McDougal.
There was a real relationship there. There were real feelings between the two of us.
McDougal claims she had an affair with Trump in 2006 and was paid off by Trump's friends at the National Enquirer in August of 2016, shortly before the election. The former president has denied both affairs, and today his defense attorney promised a vigorous fight.
We'll proceed to see a judge at some point, plead not guilty, start talking about filing motions, which we will do immediately and very aggressively.
Trump has repeatedly attacked District Attorney Alvin Bragg, even posting a picture of himself holding a baseball bat next to a photo of Bragg. And today he lashed out at the judge who will preside over his case. Security around the courthouse is now stepped up, and police are bracing for protests on the day Trump arrives.
Aaron Katersky joins us from outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan. So the former president is expected to arrive in New York on Monday. But what can we expect on Tuesday when he plans to surrender to authorities?
He's expected, Mona, to be driven here to court from Trump Tower down Fifth Avenue, and then some route the Secret Service will work out. He'll enter court, it's expected, through a side door. We're still not sure once inside whether he really needs to be fingerprinted and photographed. But at some point, he's going to be brought inside a courtroom just like any other criminal defendant to enter a plea. His lawyer said it'll be a plea of not guilty. And then we expect Trump to head right back home to Florida to continue campaigning for president. Mona?
All right, Aaron Katersky, thank you. And the former president has reportedly spent much of the past 24 hours shoring up support with most Republicans, including his potential opponents in 2024, rallying to his side against the indictment. ABC's Rachel Scott has the latest from Mar-a-Lago.
No sooner was Donald Trump indicted than he picked up the phone and started pushing top Republicans to defend him. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy quickly responding, tweeting the Manhattan DA has irreparably damaged our country in an attempt to interfere in our presidential election. But McCarthy has also said Trump supporters should not come out to protest. Sources tell us the former president is keeping track of who is with him and who is not. Today, many of his potential challengers for the Republican nomination lining up to defend him. For now,
When you get into political prosecutions like this, it's more about revenge than it is about justice.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis calling the indictment un-American and a weaponization of the legal system. As for President Biden, he's refusing to comment at all.
Your reaction to President Trump's indictment? Are you worried this will further divide our country, the indictment? I have no comment on it. Yes, Mr. President.
Rachel Scott joins us from West Palm Beach, Florida. Rachel, some of former President Trump's rivals for the Republican nomination are defending him now. Can you explain the political calculation that they're making?
Yes, Mona. So some of Trump's potential rivals know that he is still popular with the Republican base, so they are being strategic about their comments, but you can certainly expect them to reevaluate as we continue to learn more details about the indictment and as other investigations into the former president continue. Mona?
All right, Rachel Scott in Florida, thank you. And for more context and analysis, let's bring in Representative Austin Scott from Georgia. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Mona.
Let's get right into it. It has now been 24 hours since the indictment. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's all about a booking photo for President Trump. They want to embarrass him. They want to create problems for him and the Republican Party in the next election. And that's what I believe the issue is here. I think once it goes to court, I think the president's lawyers will very quickly prove that these charges should have never been brought. But the Democratic Party will have what they wanted, which is a booking photo of Donald Trump, and that'll be embarrassing for him. And that's all this is about. And even a significant portion of the Democrats believe that this is about politics, not about the law.
And Congressman, right now, former President Trump appears to be the top contender for the GOP in 2024. Have you gotten the impression that the party is concerned about the future and the nomination?
Well, many of us in the party, including myself, I wish Donald Trump were the president right now, but I did not want him to be my Republican nominee in 2024. And I will tell you, I think that what this has done is made him the absolute nominee for the Republican Party in 2024. I'm a Republican. I like Donald Trump's policies. I wish he had stayed off Twitter. I think he'd be the president of the United States right now if he had. And I think the Democratic Party recognizes that he is a challenge in 2024 for the Republican Party. And I think they're doing everything they can to help him. What they have miscalculated is that if it's Donald Trump versus Joe Biden next time, Donald Trump's going to win. And he's going to win because Joe Biden's policies are so bad.
There's still another step because our reporters have spoken to GOP voters who are supporting Ron DeSantis, and they said they've shifted because of the chaos that they feel that they've experienced with Trump. Do you see a world where the party shifts more towards DeSantis?
I'm one of those people that would support Ron DeSantis. I would support Mike Pompeo. I candidly, as I said before, I was leaning towards another candidate for the Republican Party for president of the United States next year, and I still lean that way. But what they've done to Donald Trump and to Donald Trump's family is absolutely wrong and un-American. In America, the government is not supposed to hunt you, no matter who you are, and that is exactly what's happened here. You've got an overly aggressive, zealous prosecutor who is absolutely hunting Donald Trump. And there are none of us, Mona, who are alive, who are over the age of 18, who haven't committed some type of crime in our past. But the Constitution protects us in the United States from a government that actually hunts you down and charges you unreasonably with crimes. And that's what's happening with Donald Trump right here, right now.
And Congressman, as you know, in your state, Georgia, a grand jury was also convened in a separate case involving former President Trump in relation to the election meddling allegations in Georgia. What are your thoughts on that? Do you see just this continuing?
You've got a prosecutor who literally ran her campaign on what she was going to do to Donald Trump. And look, again, this is about as un-American as it gets. When you're running for a position like the Fulton County District Attorney did, and you're saying that if you get elected, you're going to prosecute Donald Trump, that's a problem. And candidly, I think people who do that should be disbarred.
And you were also part of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Do you feel like this may have any national security concerns or implications regarding any possible domestic terror threats as a result of this indictment?
I will tell you, I think that what is happening in this country in our political process in this country is extremely damaging to the United States of America. And I think that our adversaries, adversaries like China, are able to take advantage of this.
But Congressman, are you concerned about any possible potential domestic threats?
I'm absolutely concerned about domestic threats in this country. I'm absolutely concerned about what is happening internationally as well. Now, do I think that there will be violence in the country? I sure hope not. I sure hope not. Look, this is America. What's happening in this country should not be happening. This prosecutor should not have brought these charges. Let's not play into this prosecutor's game by creating the violence that he's wanting to see. Let's just not do that. I mean, we need to settle down. We can peacefully protest, but there should be no violence.
All right, Congressman Austin Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mona.
9-year-old Evelyn Deekhouse was laid to rest today, the first of the Nashville shooting victims. Friends and family were asked to wear pink and green to her funeral service. Quote, "Our hearts are completely broken." That's the Deekhouse family statement. "We cannot believe that this has happened. Evelyn was a shining light in this world." And the billion-dollar defamation lawsuit against Fox News will head to trial. The decision comes amid efforts by Fox to have it dismissed before a jury is seated in April. Dominion's $1.6 billion suit accuses Fox News of knowingly pushing false conspiracy theories about the voting machine company in the wake of the 2020 election in order to combat concerns over ratings and viewer retention. Fox attorneys argued that the network's election fraud claims were both newsworthy and a matter of opinion. President Biden with a terse response to Russia's arrest of an American journalist on espionage charges, saying, quote, "Let him go." The arrest likely meant to humiliate the U.S. and threaten journalists. ABC's Stephanie Ramos is at the White House for us tonight.
Tonight, before that visit to Mississippi, President Biden demanding Russia release U.S. journalist Evan Gershkovich, now being detained on an espionage charge.
Let him go.
The Wall Street Journal reporter now being held in the notorious Lefortovo prison in Moscow, a former KGB jail used for high-profile prisoners and described as strict and isolating. Tonight, a spokesman for the Kremlin, Dmitry Peskov, doubling down on Russia's claims Gershkovich was caught red-handed collecting state secrets for the U.S. The Wall Street Journal, which has denied the allegations, saying in an op-ed today, the timing of the arrest looks like a calculated provocation to embarrass the U.S. and intimidate the foreign press still working in Russia.
Stephanie Ramos joins us now. Stephanie, has the State Department reacted to the kidnapping of this journalist?
They have, Mona. So the State Department says they have not yet been officially notified of the arrest, and they haven't been able to send Gershkovich, a diplomat from the U.S. Embassy in Russia. Now, experts say it will likely take months before that trial even begins. If convicted, Gershkovich could face up to 20 years in prison. Mona.
Stephanie Ramos at the White House. Thank you. Urgent search for a San Francisco woman kidnapped in Mexico. The FBI is offering a $40,000 reward in hopes of finding Monica De Leon Barba, a 29-year-old U.S. citizen who was living in Mexico. She has been missing since June, kidnapped while walking home from work with her dog. The FBI says the kidnappers have been communicating with Barba's family. Pope Francis is expected to leave the hospital Saturday morning after spending 3 days recovering from bronchitis. According to the Vatican, the pontiff's hospital stay has gone well with normal medical progress. Francis, who's 86 years old, was taken Wednesday to the hospital after complaining of some respiratory difficulties and had tests performed. Still much more to get to here on Prime. Coming up, a snowboarder in danger, buried in snow and upside down. See the amazing moment as skiers saved the victim's life. But first, the fight to unionize Starbucks reaches Capitol Hill. As hundreds of stores try to meet at the negotiating table, questions are being raised about how far this movement can go, as well as what it means for consumers and prices.
The cost gets passed down to the customer anyway by the corporation right now, and they just keep billions of dollars in profits. So wouldn't you prefer that the worker who's making your latte is able to afford their rent and gas in the same paycheck?
Whenever news breaks,
the crush of families here in Poland.
Here in Kentucky, no match for the tornado.
From Monterey Park, California, on the ground in Ukraine.
Reporting from Uvalde, Texas.
ABC News Live is right there everywhere.
From the scene of that deadly missile strike in Dnipro, Ukraine.
Reporting from the earthquake in Turkey.
From Charleston, South Carolina, on the 2024 campaign trail.
From Kathmandu, Nepal.
Truckee, California, covering record snowfall.
Traveling with the president in Mexico City.
Wherever the story.
Here at this airport in Tampa, it's already shut down.
Reporting from the nurses on the picket line.
Reporting from Jerusalem.
Here at 10 Downing Street in London.
Streaming live to you.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is. We're going to take you there.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live. Streaming free everywhere. America's #1 streaming news.
With so much happening these days, it's hard to keep up.
Things change hour by hour, minute by minute.
The historic weather that's now unfolding.
The worries on Wall Street.
We're bringing you the Right Now. Been a nationwide teacher shortage.
The Right Now look at the day ahead. An alert this morning for dog owners and the key takeaways from the biggest stories.
World News Now and America This Morning, America's #1 early morning news.
Today does feel a little different. Early mornings on ABC News Live.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you? Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
They say there's strength in numbers, and that's what employees in hundreds of Starbucks are channeling. The workers say they need to stand up for their rights, and some are accusing the company of standing in their way. Senior congressional correspondent Rachel Scott has more.
Maggie Carter. Maggie Carter.
For years, 28-year-old Starbucks barista Maggie Carter has been at the forefront of her store's fight to unionize.
What I'm mostly looking forward to is seeing a billionaire be held accountable for his actions.
And today, she's taking her message to Capitol Hill.
I'm a single mother working tirelessly for this company for 4 years, and I'm certainly not alone in feeling nothing but left behind during a time where everything we knew about the world was uncertain.
Maggie and thousands of other Starbucks employees, called partners, say unionizing is their best shot at representation against the billion-dollar company.
It's well past time for the company to bargain in good faith. Help us hold them accountable.
Over the past 18 months, Starbucks has waged the most aggressive and illegal union-busting campaign in the modern history of our country.
Senators grilling recently departed interim CEO Howard Schultz over allegations that he and the company repeatedly violated labor laws.
Mr. Schultz, I am seriously concerned by reports that Starbucks is coercing and retaliating against workers for exercising their rights to organize. For example, by unjustly firing workers who are involved in union organizing, conducting surveillance of union organizers, and reducing their work hours.
I had no involvement in any specific issue that regards a union in a district or a store. We have never, ever taken any benefit away, and we never would, of anyone who was interested in joining a union.
What do we want?
Starbucks is just one of several giant corporations who've seen their workers pursue union formation in the past few years.
No coffee!
From Home Depot to Amazon to Disney, ABC's parent company, American workers are seeking out unions to improve pay, benefits, and working conditions. In fact, support for labor unions has increased since the pandemic, with about 71% of Americans in support.
There's been a real shift in worker attitudes, particularly younger workers. This generation, younger generation, has different attitudes about unions, about worker rights, about their expectations. Any company's going to have to adapt to that.
But only 10% of the American workforce is unionized, the lowest on record. As the labor movement has brewed across the country, a Starbucks store in Buffalo, New York became the first to unionize in 2021. Since then, over 250 stores have voted to unionize, although that's a small fraction of almost 9,000 company-owned stores nationwide.
If you go back to the 50s and 60s, part of the reasons the unions were able to be successful is they could organize these large industrial plants, auto plants, steel plants, with thousands or tens of thousands of workers all at once. A service sector business like a Starbucks here, a lot of them have small individual workplaces all over the place. And that's a real barrier to union organizing.
For the past 4 years, this Knoxville, Tennessee Starbucks has been Maggie's home away from home.
I can usually hear someone greet me at the drive-thru despite not looking at them and know whether it's this customer or whether it's that customer.
It's a job she juggles with being a part-time student at the University of Tennessee and a full-time single mom.
Oh, we have to find the scroll.
I want to show my son that if you want to fight for something, you can do it.
Maggie says she was initially attracted to Starbucks' progressive social values and benefits for part-time workers. During the pandemic, she says her store was short-staffed, maintenance issues weren't being addressed, and COVID protections were lacking. When she learned about the Buffalo baristas' fight, she was inspired to organize.
Others will say there are other ways to get this done. Why is a union the solution?
It uplifts workers entirely. It gives us the opportunity to operate as a unit and have a collective say together about what we think our workplace should look like.
1 year ago today, her store voted to unionize.
Starbucks can do better for all of us, and we're here to stick together in solidarity and show them that that's what's going to happen.
But Maggie says she faced retaliation for her efforts in the form of reduced work hours, which she says has caused her to lose her benefits.
Tell me what the work environment is like at your store right now.
Right now, it's chaos. We're very often short-staffed. We're very often out of things.
In a statement to ABC News, Starbucks responding to retaliation claims, saying in part, "Where partners have been subject to corrective action, including separation, we have consistently held that they engaged in misconduct contrary to Starbucks' established policies and procedures, not in retaliation for their participation in or support of any concerted union activity." To the extent claims have been brought against Starbucks for violation of labor laws, the company strongly denies any wrongdoing. Although Maggie's store has unionized, the union Starbucks Workers United has not been able to come to an agreement with the company. In fact, no store in the U.S. has been able to. On the Hill, it wasn't just Schultz making his case. Some Republican members of the committee taking issue with the hearing itself.
But I don't want to be part of any witch hunt that vilifies any American business.
This is not a fair and impartial hearing.
Also testifying at the hearing was Rachel Gressler, a senior research fellow at conservative think tank the Heritage Foundation.
Employers shouldn't have to fear congressional harassment. The issue of the unfair labor practices that are against Starbucks is a very small number. And so it's not really Congress's role to be hauling in CEOs of private companies and harassing them.
But before he left, Schultz suggested the company would meet at the bargaining table.
Will you make a promise to this committee that you will exchange proposals with the union so that we can begin to make meaningful progress?
On a single store basis, we will continue to negotiate in good faith.
Whether those meetings happen or not, Maggie and her fellow partners are determined to keep fighting.
You have some critics who say that the cost of the unions just gets passed down to the customer. How do you respond to those critics?
The cost gets passed down to the customer anyway by the corporation right now, and they just keep billions of dollars in profits. So wouldn't you prefer that the worker who's making your latte is able to afford their rent and gas in the same paycheck versus padding a CEO's pockets?
Thanks to Rachel Scott for that report, and we have still much more to get to. Coming up, the search for a missing 4-year-old boy, a look at the race to find him before dark. And we are hearing from a juror in the Gwyneth Paltrow ski collision trial why she believed the actress over the man who took her to court. But next, baseball is back. We take a look at how Major League games could be different this year by the numbers.
much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers.
In Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
From the capital.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
We're along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
From America's #1 news comes the all-new ABC News app. Breaking news, incredible video, faster, smarter, and customizable to your interests. If you love being in the know, you're gonna love this. Experience the all-new ABC News app. Download it now.
Brooke Shields, the most photographed woman in the world.
Iconic American beauty.
A sexualized child model.
Exploitation.
Vulnerable.
She was catapulted into the world of adult sexuality.
I'm amazed that I survived any of it. What happened to her isn't really about her, it's just about women. I was just born with this face. I wanted to think about the things that could have happened without beauty.
With so much happening these days, it's hard to keep up.
Things change hour by hour, minute by minute.
The historic weather that's now unfolding.
The worries on Wall Street.
We're bringing you the right now. But a nationwide teacher shortage.
The right now look at the day ahead. An alert this morning for dog owners and the key takeaways from the biggest stories.
World News Now and America This Morning, America's #1 early morning news.
Today does feel a little different. Early mornings on ABC News Live.
You never know what you're going to get on this show. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Yes, Whoopi!
This mic on? Can you hear me out there?
Behind the scenes is always a better show.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's what people don't see during the commercial breaks.
Right, they don't.
What happened?
I had no idea really what I was getting myself into.
That day that we walked out, I treasure that day. I couldn't sit there.
You're doing good, Joy. You're doing good.
Oh, yeah, baby.
It was crazy. Behind the Table. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Name, image, and likeness, or NIL.
The 3 magic words that have upended the landscape of college sports as we've known it.
It's just the ability to make money through social media marketing.
It changed everything. My concern is, how is it handled? Critics will say people like yourself are buying these athletes. I mean, what do you say to that?
Cashing in the debate over paying college athletes. Impact by Nightline. Now streaming on Hulu. This is where the newsmakers come first in the morning to be heard. America's #1 morning show.
How would your mom feel about your relationship with your brother now?
I can't imagine what it feels like to go from $20 billion to $100,000. Yeah. Are you worried about going to jail?
You write that you had low-grade depression. How'd you get out of that?
Wherever the story, ABC's Good Morning America is right there.
Reporting from the earthquake in Turkey, I'm David Muir. Wherever the story, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Major League Baseball returned to the field for opening day yesterday, with nearly every team bringing renewed hope that this season can end in a World Series title. The league also began following new rules that will change how the game is played this season. So let's take a look at baseball's opening day by the numbers. All 30 teams were in action Thursday for opening day. That's the first time that's happened since 1968, with 15 matchups around the league. Some standout performances: Angels star Shohei Ohtani struck out 10 and allowed no runs, just the 25th opening day pitcher in MLB history to do so, but the Angels didn't win when the bullpen blew the lead. And it took just one at-bat for Yankee slugger Aaron Judd to hit his first home run of the season, following his historic 62 home runs last year. Opening day also marked the first official day of 4 major rule changes meant to speed up the game and get more action in the field. That includes a pitch clock, with pitchers getting 15 to 20 seconds to throw to the plate. That change helped shorten spring training games by 26 minutes on average compared to last season. And the size of bases have been increased by 3 inches, reducing the distance between each base to try to encourage more steals. Finally, there is a major change in the season-long schedule with 52 division games for each team compared to 76 in recent seasons. That's because all 30 teams are set to play each other at least once during the season, meaning more interleague games and fewer division matchups. And remember, if your favorite team didn't win yesterday, don't take it too hard. We still have 161 games left to go. And much more ahead here on Prime. It's an expectation at most weddings, but many are going without it. What a growing number of couples are deciding not to have at their celebrations. From Glee to Everything Everywhere All at Once and even Grey's Anatomy, Harry Shum Jr. tells us about his latest roles and how much the Hollywood landscape has changed.
There's so much more opportunities and stories to have a place for Asian stories or not Asian stories, very American stories.
What does it take to be America's #1 news? It takes asking the straightforward, tough questions.
Do you believe that Donald Trump should ever be president again?
How would your mom feel about your relationship with your brother now?
I can't imagine what it feels like to go from $20 billion to $100,000.
Yeah.
Are you worried about going to jail?
You write that you had low-grade depression. How'd you get out of that?
The news-making interviews.
You said that there were 6 friends. One of them was sick.
Yeah.
Do you have future political aspirations?
Going to the front line.
The search for survivors. How does this war end?
And getting to the heart of the story.
Thank you for being here. We'll be here for the long run.
ABC News, #1 in the morning, the #1 newscast, #1 in daytime talk, Friday nights, Sunday mornings versus the competition, and the #1 streaming news. Thank you for making ABC News America's trusted, straightforward first choice.
With so much happening these days, it's hard to keep up.
Things change hour by hour, minute by minute.
The historic weather that's now unfolding.
The worries on Wall Street.
We're bringing you the Right Now. But a nationwide teacher shortage.
The Right Now look at the day ahead. An alert this morning for dog owners and the key takeaways from the biggest stories.
World News Now and America This Morning, America's #1 early morning news.
Today does feel a little different. Early mornings on ABC News Live.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
In Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
From the capital.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
You're along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Name, image, and likeness, or NIL. The 3 magic words that have upended the landscape of college sports as we've known it.
It's just the ability to make money through social media marketing.
It changed everything. My concern is, how is it handled? Critics will say people like yourself are buying these athletes. I mean, what do you say to that?
Cashing in the debate over paying college athletes. Impact by Nightline. Now streaming on Hulu.
Get ready, America, every Friday.
The hottest trends, styles, and must-have. What's the right stuff to buy right now? I really love that. It's time to buy the right stuff.
Yes!
And save big time, too.
The right stuff.
Fridays on GMA. You're gonna love it.
13 women opened their doors to the man who would end their lives.
Truth and Lies, The Boston Strangler, the new true crime podcast series. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts and watch Boston Strangler starring Keira Knightley, streaming on Hulu.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it. Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now. This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
How cute.
Yes. So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out. The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
Welcome back. Body camera video shows the desperate search for a missing 4-year-old boy and his dog. The amazing rescue after a snowboarder is buried in the snow, and the offering so many couples are now leaving out of their weddings. These stories and more in tonight's rundown.
Dramatic video showing New Jersey State Police troopers finding a lost 4-year-old and his dog in the woods of Atlantic County. Take a look. Troopers say the boy had been in the woods in Buena Vista Township for about an hour. They say his mom could hear him calling for help, but just could not find him. Look at him, so upset. There it is. Look at this body cam video. Troopers found the little boy, so happy, safe, but obviously upset. Look at the black lab, never left his side. State police say the boy was found about a half-mile from his house.
A heart-pounding rescue caught on camera.
Hold on, I'm coming.
A snowboarder buried upside down. Francis Zuber was backcountry skiing on Mount Baker, Washington, when he fatefully crossed paths with the engulfed snowboarder in a tree well. You can hear him out of breath, using his hands to dig and tunnel, finally reaching the face of a motionless snowboarder. Ian Steger, with years of experience on Mount Baker, afraid he was not going to be found in time and make it out alive.
One of the things that I was thinking about while I was down there is like, wow, like I'm going to die down here, and I'm not going to be able to, tell my fiance how much I love her.
Former Olympic runner Oscar Pistorius has been denied parole in a South African court. Pistorius is serving more than 13 years in prison for the 2013 murder of his girlfriend, Reva Steenkamp.
Seattle's mayor signed a new law Thursday, making it the first U.S. city to require paid sick leave for most gig workers. The city making a temporary measure passed during the pandemic permanent for food delivery and other gig workers. Twitter plans to end its verification system that gave blue check marks to noteworthy accounts on April 1st. According to the company, accounts that currently have a blue check mark will not keep their verification status unless they're subscribed to Twitter Blue. Some check marks will remain, like the gold check mark, which is for brands who pay for the service through Twitter verified organizations, and the gray check mark, which indicates that an account represents a government or multilateral organization. It's unclear how many organizations or users will be paying to keep their verification status, meaning it may become more difficult for users to discern trustworthy accounts on the platform.
Alcohol-free weddings are trending. The hashtag dry wedding garnering more than 3 million views.
You still have the vibes, you can still have the cute little fancy drink, but you don't have to be weird about it.
As more couples opt in favor of this new kind of sober, curious celebration. Some would-be wedding guests reacting with mixed reviews.
I've suddenly come over very ill.
Alcoholic drinks can be upwards of 25% of your overall food and beverage cost. And with an average wedding going for $30,000 in 2023, around 4% of couples are expected to have an alcohol-free wedding.
After an 8-day trial, a jury unanimously decided that actress Gwyneth Paltrow was not at fault in a 2016 collision on a Utah ski slope. Instead, finding the plaintiff was 100% at fault. ABC's Kayna Whitworth spoke with one of the jurors in the trial.
Was Gwyneth Paltrow at fault? No. Was Terry Sanderson at fault? Yes.
Gwyneth Paltrow waking up victorious.
What percent of the fault do you assign to Terry Sanderson? 100%.
After more than a week of grueling testimony and heated exchanges, the jury finding 76-year-old Terry Sanderson 100% at fault for a 2016 ski crash in Park City, Utah, involving the two. Paltrow awarded the $1 in economic damages plus the cost of attorney's fees that she sought in her countersuit, claiming Sanderson crashed into her.
Mr. Sanderson categorically hit me on that ski slope, and that is the truth.
After her win, Paltrow's seen saying something to Sanderson as she left the courtroom, Sanderson revealing the details of that exchange to reporters outside.
Her exact words, "I wish you well." Very kind of her. I said, "Thank you, dear."
The Oscar-winning actress releasing a statement overnight saying, "I felt that acquiescing to a false claim compromised my integrity." She also thanked the judge and jury. Now, in an ABC News exclusive, juror number 11, Samantha Emery, speaking out for the first time.
So the whole thing was a little shocking to me.
Revealing she changed her opinion multiple times throughout the trial, but once the case was handed over to the jury, it only took a couple of hours to get all 8 of them on the same page.
Yeah, we did not have to. We did have a unanimous decision.
The 31-year-old saying Paltrow's testimony rang true.
Did you find Gwyneth Paltrow's testimony to be convincing?
I did. I think, there was in the back of my mind, yes, this woman's an actress. And, I took that into account. But I I didn't feel that she had a reason to lie under oath. She's always in the spotlight, so she always has to be honest.
And while she says Sanderson may have convinced himself he was right, he didn't convince her.
He was telling his truth, and I think, unfortunately, some of that has been distorted due to some other factors. But I do think that he did not intend to tell a truth that wasn't his truth.
In the end, she says it was Paltrow's expert witness, Dr. Schur, who really brought home the case.
He's a snow sports expert in many different ways. I think the fact that Dr. Schur could speak to the DIN settings and he specifically studied snow science, that he had a stronger opinion.
Imrie also saying those social media photos of Sanderson traveling the world after the accident didn't help.
I think I wrote down, wow, I need to make some more money so I can go travel this way. You know, I wouldn't have thought he was capable of those things based on the picture that had been painted.
And while this case involved a celebrity, Imrie says her training as a nurse helped her focus on the facts, not the faces, as she made her decision.
I think it's important that the public doesn't just think that this was a win because Gwyneth's a celebrity. I mean, this is based on the evidence. This is based on the law. I do work in medicine, and you have to look at everyone the same. So I think that should apply in the courtroom as well.
And thanks to Kana for that report. Now, one of the stars, the new stars of Grey's Anatomy, actor Harry Shum Jr., and his unique path from dancing in iPod commercials to breaking into Hollywood with a role on the hit TV series Glee and making it big on the big screen in this year's Oscar Best Picture winner, Everything Everywhere All at Once. I recently sat down with him to talk about his new role on one of TV's most iconic series and why making it as a TV doctor is making his mama proud.
I do want to talk about your role in Grey's Anatomy, but I want to start with the Oscars.
Yeah.
Because, first of all, your tux was fabulous.
Oh, thank you.
Looked amazing. You were there as part of Everything Everywhere All at Once. That was a huge night for Asian Americans. Can you tell me a little bit about what that was like from your perspective and if you're still feeling that buzz?
Yeah, I mean, it still feels very surreal. I mean, the whole year of how this movie came about, to the love that was received by people watching it in the world, and I couldn't imagine what it is for like Michelle, Daniel, Stephanie, and James, and Jamie, and just Key, like seeing them pour their hearts and soul onto receiving an award. How, one, grateful, and also how timely it was, and in a lot of ways of it very much parallels to, I think, Asian Americans kind of in Hollywood just not being able to ever feel like they had a place in it, and to kind of see that happen within a year, in a culmination of like everything that has been leading up to it was just so beautiful.
You mentioned a little bit about creating a space for Asian Americans. You've been in this industry for a while now. Can you tell me a little bit about how the Hollywood landscape has changed since you started?
Like 10 years ago, it was a very, very different landscape. The jobs were very limited, and there was only place for one or two. And to see now how it's become, there's so much more opportunities and stories to have a place for Asian stories or not Asian stories, very American stories. It is my background, but it doesn't define me. I think right now people are kind of able to choose what story they want to tell, and I think that's most important.
Can you tell us a little bit about your dancing days? Fun facts about your career, though. You were on tour with Beyonce. Mm-hmm. What was that like?
It was, I got into it like a week before they left tour, so it just was a whirlwind because I had to learn like 16 dances, like in a week.
She doesn't play around.
She does not play around.
Is that your first love?
Yeah, no, I just loved movement. I remember when I was a kid, I mean, there's a couple of reasons other than watching it as an art and being like enamored by it, at a young age. It was not something that I thought I could do. It was more, I think I was pushed to the point of when I moved to America, English was actually my third language. So not being able to speak it and know the culture, it was very difficult for me to communicate with people. And it was this, I guess, another language that really helped me grow as a person.
And you were also in those old school Apple commercials where you're the silhouette.
It was one of the harder things to do because, you couldn't just dance like this. You had to dance like this because it's silhouette, and you got to show every line. But I ended up doing like 6 or 7 of them.
I do want to talk about Grey's Anatomy. You are now in the Shondaland family. Tell me about Dr. Kwan.
Yes, Dr. Kwan, he is, you know, when we introduced him, he was definitely someone who was a little overly confident.
What happened to you?
Grazed with a brick.
The one thrown through the window? Has anyone ruled out a head injury?
Trying to prove himself constantly, very competitive, and I think, you know, there's space for someone who is obviously hiding something, or not even in a bad way, but just not knowing how to really channel his compassion, because that has to come out in some way, shape, or form, and sometimes it comes out very poorly. He's a doctor who does care, obviously, about his patients beyond just getting to the top, and I love the season that, you know, we're getting to see the growth of not just my character, but the character, the other interns as well.
And there's 19 seasons of the show. I mean, it's been going on for like decades now at this point. What is that like to join such an iconic show and an iconic cast?
It's like watching something from afar. It's kind of like watching people like enjoy a nice meal, and they keep talking about this food that tastes so good, this restaurant you have to visit. And then when you finally got to eat it and you got to be there and you got to enjoy this experience, it's like that staple restaurant that's been there for so long, and there's a reason why they've been there for so long. I think it really feels that way. They lean right into it and really explore what it is on a human level, and humanizing a lot of doctors in a lot of ways. You know, when I was younger, you look at doctors, you're like, oh yeah, they're superheroes, they can do whatever. No, they know everything. And it's like, yes, on that subject, but they still have to deal with everything else that's around them. I think it's just really cool to pop into something that you're the new person there, but also enjoying the benefits of all the hard work that they've done over the years.
Yes, it's been going on for so long, but there's so many chapters, and there's new characters being introduced, so it's a journey that the audience has been on with you guys.
Yeah, makes me so happy is hearing people who have watched the show for so long and still care, and it brings a comfort to them, because not only the characters that they've fallen in love with, and then the possibility of kind of, am I gonna like this person, or am I not gonna like this person? And I think the writers do it interesting to kind of give you a whole roller coaster of a ride. Like, yeah, you probably won't like this person for a little bit, but I think just showing that everyone has a good quality if you stick around long enough, and if they are around the right people, and if they're given the right situation to really show their true colors, and colors that I think would you didn't know that you would like. But I think now, playing a doctor on TV, that my mom's maiden name is Kwan, so she's over the moon. She's just like, my son is a doctor, and it's like my maiden name, like it just makes her so happy.
Everyone's happy, right?
Yeah, everyone's happy.
You got a doctor in the family?
Yeah, exactly.
And you can catch Grey's Anatomy Thursday nights on ABC and later on Hulu. Well, that's our show for this hour. I'm Mona Kosar Abdi. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thank you for streaming with us. And coming up in the next hour, a tornado emergency, the destruction left behind by a catastrophic tornado, and where the storm is headed next. And the latest developments on former President Trump's indictment, how many charges he could be facing, and the biggest challenge for prosecutors.
With so much at stake in our world right now, we wanted to thank you for your trust and for making ABC News America's #1 news.
And thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Right now in America, with so much at stake, thank you for making ABC's This Week America's #1 news and politics show on Sunday mornings. This is where the newsmakers come first in the morning to be heard. America's #1 morning show.
How would your mom feel about your relationship with your brother now?
I can't imagine what it feels like to go from $20 billion to $100,000. Yeah. Are you worried about going to jail?
You write that you had low-grade depression. How'd you get out of that?
Wherever the story, ABC's Good Morning America is right there.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers.
In Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
From the capital.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
You're along I-5. Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
You never know what you're going to get on this show. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Yes, Whoopi!
This mic on? Can you hear me out there?
Behind the scenes is always a better show.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's what people don't see during the commercial break.
Right, they don't.
What happened?
I had no idea really what I was getting myself into.
That day that we walked out, I treasured that day. I couldn't sit there.
You're doing good, Joy. You're doing good.
Oh, yeah, baby. It was crazy.
Behind the Table. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you? Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
Name, image, and likeness, or NIL. The 3 magic words that have upended the landscape of college sports as we've known it.
It's just the ability to make money through social media marketing.
It changed everything. My concern is, how is it handled?
Critics will say people like yourself are buying these athletes. I mean, what do you say to that?
Cashing in the debate over paying college athletes. Impact by Nightline. Now streaming on Hulu.
Reporting from Monterey Park, California, I'm Robin Roberts. Wherever the story is, we're going to take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
I'm Mona Kosar-Abdi in for Lindsay Davis. Thank you for streaming with us. We are monitoring several developments here at ABC News at this hour. The American kidnapped in Niger in 2016 held his first press conference in California today. Jeff Woodkey admitted there was a time he lost hope that he would see his wife and sons again, but his faith kept him going. Former South African Paralympic star Oscar Pistorius, jailed in 2016 for killing his girlfriend, Reva Steenkamp, has been denied parole, once the darling of the Paralympic movement for pushing for greater recognition and acceptance of disabled athletes. Pistorius shot dead Steenkamp, a model and a law student, in his bathroom on Valentine's Day in 2013. The billion-dollar defamation lawsuit against Fox News will head to trial. Dominion's $1.6 billion suit accuses Fox News of knowingly pushing false conspiracy theories about the voting machine company in the wake of the 2020 election in order to combat concerns over ratings and viewer retention. Fox attorneys argued that the network's election fraud claims were both newsworthy and a matter of opinion. Next, to the 80 million Americans facing the threat of severe weather, and it could be a very long night ahead for residents in the South all the way up to Wisconsin. Late today, the National Weather Service warned residents of Little Rock of a catastrophic tornado. Soon after, the twister arrived, and tonight officials in Arkansas are reporting a significant number of injuries, with at least 24 hospitalized in just Little Rock, according to the city's mayor. Victor Okendo reports tonight on the major severe weather threat.
Tonight, the tornado emergency unfolding in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Take your tornado precautions now. You're looking live right now, north of Little Rock. That is the lowering, and there's a tornado in there. This is not a drill. This is confirmed.
It's gonna hit the radio tower. Go.
Storm chasers tracking the massive, fast-moving twister as it heads into the north side of the city of 200,000 people. This neighborhood taking a direct hit, downing trees, shearing roofs, splintering homes, and tossing vehicles everywhere. Little Rock's fire chief telling ABC News there are significant injuries.
The ambulances are pretty constant as they're getting called out here to search through these homes.
Meteorologists at our ABC affiliate KATV watching as the tornado tracks through their hometown, overcome with emotion.
We have friends and family who have been affected by this, that homes have been destroyed. And so if there's hesitation, we're trying to keep our composure too.
As this plays out in Little Rock, President Biden on the ground today in Rolling Fork, Mississippi, where they are still recovering from a deadly tornado outbreak that hit 1 week ago today.
This community is going to be rebuilt and built back better than it was before.
Parts of the same area at risk once again tonight.
Victor Oquendo, thank you. And now to ABC senior meteorologist Rob Marciano. Rob, the situation right now is fluid, but will this threat continue through the night?
Yeah, it's going to, Mona, through at least 1 in the morning. And given what we've already seen today, it's going to be a dangerous night ahead for millions of Americans. By the way, that tornado that's on the ground just north of Memphis, that was the same cell that went through northern Little Rock just a couple of hours ago and did all that damage. And, of course, we have damage and tornadoes that dropped in parts of eastern Iowa. And now that's really another point where we're really worried. By the way, blizzard warnings on the northern fringe of this thing, southern Minnesota back through the Dakotas. But obviously the most dangerous aspect of this are these thunderstorms that are producing tornadoes. And the watch is up from Mason City to Milwaukee, Chicago, back through Springfield, Paducah, all the way down just east of Dallas. And a watch has just been extended now to include Nashville until 1 o'clock in the morning. And that's a PDS watch, a particularly dangerous situation. That's a pretty rare watch for the SPC to issue. Also rare are these pink areas, high-risk day. I think it's been like 2 years since I've seen this. They don't issue them often, and this one, unfortunately, is verifying in the way of tornadoes touching the ground and doing damage. Here's our future radar on our computer model showing you how all these individual storms will line up as they press across the Tennessee Valley. 2 in the morning, they get through Nashville. Hopefully no more damage there, but these things hold together pretty well until they get to the northeast. A shock coming through in the morning, and then another one coming through late in the day, and that will have some upper-level energy to it. Look at the bright spots there right around dinner time. And now the SPC has issued a severe threat with a yellow area from Pittsburgh to Baltimore, New York, Boston, Albany. Damaging winds, large hail, a tornado not out of the question here either. So whether you live in the Northeast or in the Midwest storm zone tonight, you've got to have a safety plan and be ready to act on it when these warnings do fall. Mona?
All right, Rob Marciano staying on top of the severe weather threat for us. Thank you. Now to the other major news this evening on the unprecedented indictment of former President Trump by a Manhattan grand jury. Sources tell ABC News that he could surrender to authorities as soon as Tuesday. The exact charges are still unknown, but they are linked to hush money payments to adult movie star Stormy Daniels just before the 2016 election. But sources say there could be about 24 charges. ABC's senior investigative reporter Aaron Katursky has the latest.
Tonight, sources tell ABC News former President Donald Trump will surrender to authorities in New York on Tuesday and be booked at the courthouse as a criminal defendant. Until then, the indictment against him remains sealed, but sources familiar with the case tell us Trump is facing around 24 counts, including felonies, stemming from a $130,000 hush payment to porn actress Stormy Daniels in the closing weeks of the 2016 campaign.
Did you know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels?
At first, Trump denied knowing about the payment, but later admitted he did. And his legal team now claims he arranged it not to protect his campaign, but to protect his family. It's not the only hush payment the grand jury heard about. Sources tell ABC News prosecutors also presented evidence of a $150,000 payment to a second woman, Playboy model Karen McDougal.
There was a real relationship there. There were real feelings between the two of us.
McDougal claims she had an affair with Trump in 2006 and was paid off by Trump's friends at the National Enquirer in August of 2016, shortly before the election. The former president has denied both affairs, and today his defense attorney promised a vigorous fight.
We'll proceed to see a judge at some point, plead not guilty, start talking about filing motions, which we will do immediately and very aggressively.
Trump has repeatedly attacked District Attorney Alvin Bragg, even posting a picture of himself holding a baseball bat next to a photo of Bragg. And today he lashed out at the judge who will preside over his case. Security around the courthouse is now stepped up, and police are bracing for protests on the day Trump arrives.
Aaron Katursky, thank you. Joining us now for more is white-collar defense attorney and former federal prosecutor Shan Wu. Shan, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Oh, glad to be here.
So we, of course, don't know what is in the indictment and won't until it is unsealed. But as we have reported, Trump faces around 24 counts, including felonies. What is going to be the biggest challenge going forward for District Attorney Alvin Bragg?
Well, I think the biggest challenge it really tees off of what other crimes he paired the falsification of business records with. That by itself is a misdemeanor unless you show that it was done with the intent to cover up some other crime. So depending on what those other crimes are that are paired with it, there could be some room for Trump's defense team to make some hay. So for example, if he were to have chosen to pair it with the federal campaign finance violations, Trump's attorneys will probably argue that there's a preemption issue, meaning that that's purely a federal matter, that state prosecutors can't do it. But on the other hand, Bragg has a pretty good menu of other options to choose from, including New York State election crimes and potentially some of the financial crimes that the Trump organization had been convicted of, but Trump himself was not charged with. So it really remains to be seen. But the one that most people have talked about, when you hear commentators saying there's a novel legal theory, the novelty would be trying to use the federal violation to pair that with the New York State violation.
And what do you think that Trump's legal team's strategy will be?
I think they will first hit the prosecutor with an avalanche of motions trying to get rid of the case on legal grounds, including the ones we had just discussed. If they fail to do that, and that's tough to do, actually, particularly if there are that many counts to really knock the case out of the box before they get started. If they fail in doing that, then they really have to turn to the actual trial strategy. They'll need to try to persuade the jury that Michael Cohen's not a credible witness. They'll need to persuade the jury that Trump's only real interest in paying this money to Stormy Daniels was personal, having nothing to do with the campaign. And that's a little bit of an uphill road for them because factually, the case is not very hard. It's pretty straightforward and relatively easy to present to a jury, and it's easy for them to understand, a man buying silence.
And I'm sure you've dealt with grand jury cases before. Do you anticipate a gag order during this case? And what would that mean for the former president, who will likely be campaigning while this trial is going on?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mona. Given what Trump has already been known to do, a judge would probably really not like that much talking going on, even intimidation or threatening of witnesses. But that balancing act with Trump being actively campaigning is a difficult one. So I think a judge could fashion a very narrow order. One recalls when Roger Stone was on trial, he was forbidden from posting images because he posted kind of a threatening image about that judge. So something along those lines might be done. I mean, Trump's defense team is certainly telling him that he needs to settle down and let his surrogates do the attacking, not him personally, but it's unlikely they're going to be very successful in reining him in that way.
And lastly, looking ahead, where do you see this case going?
I think most likely it will head to a trial. I don't think that there's going to be any kind of a pretrial dismissal. And then I also don't think Trump's going to accept any kind of a plea deal either. So I think we'll head to trial. That'll take some time to get there, at least several months, if not more. And then it's going to come down to just how persuasive is the case to New York City jurors.
All right, former federal prosecutor Shan Wu, thank you so much for your time. 9-year-old Evelyn Deek House was laid to rest today, the first of the Nashville shooting victims. Attendees were asked to wear pink and green to her funeral service. Her family saying, quote, "Our hearts are completely broken." This as the harrowing 911 calls of the shooting detail the chaos and desperation from the inside. ABC's Elwin Lopez continues in Nashville for us tonight.
Soon, Evelyn Dickhouse remembered as a shining light in this world, many dressed in pink in tribute to the 9-year-old's love of color in the first funeral service for the 6 victims here in Nashville. And tonight, a fuller picture of the terror inside Covenant School as the heavily armed shooter opened fire.
911, what is the location of your emergency?
Covenant Presbyterian Church, active shooter. Active shooter, please. The fire alarms are pulled. Everything's ringing. We have children in the building, about a couple hundred.
Teachers, administrators, and church staff activating emergency protocol.
I have locked my doors and my windows are blacked out. Don't move up from underneath that desk. I'm not.
Hiding in their offices.
Oh, my God. I'm afraid I'm going to die.
You can hear sirens blaring in the background. This caller reassuring his colleague.
Yes, help is on the way. So
stay underneath the counter.
And outside the church, Chad Scruggs calling too.
Are you inside?
Okay. No, I'm coming. I'm the lead pastor. I'm going that way now.
You may not want to go there without police.
He would later find his 9-year-old daughter, Hallie, would be among the dead.
It's difficult to listen to her. Thanks to Elwyn. And so much more to get to. Coming up, Helen Keller's story often centers around her disabilities, but there's much more to her story. But next, the decision from a Romanian court that's now allowing controversial social media personality Andrew Tate to go from police custody to house arrest.
Whenever news breaks,
the crush of families here in Poland.
Here in Kentucky, no match for the tornado.
From Monterey Park, California, on the ground in Ukraine.
Reporting from Uvalde, Texas.
ABC News Live is right there everywhere.
From the scene of that deadly missile strike in Dnipro, Ukraine.
Reporting from the earthquake in Turkey.
From Charleston, South Carolina, on the 2024 campaign trail.
From Kathmandu, Nepal.
Truckee, California, covering record snowfall.
Traveling with the president in Mexico City.
Wherever the story.
Here at this airport in Tampa, it's already shut down.
Reporting from the nurses on the picket line.
Reporting from Jerusalem.
Here at 10 Downing Street in London.
Streaming live to you.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is. We're going to take you there.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live. Streaming free everywhere. America's #1 streaming news.
Bring them on. If only there was a place in the morning to start my day. With a smile, somewhere to help me get in the know. A place that's spectacular as well. Me.
I think we might know a place, right, guys?
Bring your friends. Oh, wait, there is.
Good morning, America.
GMA, 7A, every day. Boom. Boom. Boom.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Robin. Good morning, America. How are you?
Boom. Now that's how you start your day, people.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you? Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
Reporting from Chicago, I'm Alex Perez. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
We're tracking several headlines around the world. Social media personality Andrew Tate was moved to house arrest after a Romanian court overturned prosecutors' request to keep him in police custody until late April. Tate and his brother Tristan and 2 Romanian female suspects have been under police detention since December as prosecutors investigate them for suspected human trafficking, rape, and forming a criminal gang to sexually exploit women. They have all denied the accusation. Pope Francis is expected to leave the hospital Saturday morning after spending 3 days recovering from bronchitis. According to the Vatican, the pontiff's hospital stay has gone well with normal medical progress. Francis, who's 86 years old, was taken Wednesday to the hospital after complaining of some respiratory difficulties and had tests performed. Around 100 wildfires are still active in northern Spain, most of them allegedly provoked by arsonists, whom the region's leader called fire terrorists, as over 600 firefighters attempt to put out the blazes. Local police said they opened multiple investigations, but none of the arsonists have been identified. The story of Helen Keller has often focused more on her disabilities rather than her fight for disability rights and racial justice, as well as her stance against fascism. In his new book, After the Miracle, The Political Crusades of Helen Keller, journalist and New York Times best-selling author Max Wallace brings to light Keller's lifelong efforts to improve humanity. Max, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So a lot of us are familiar with the story of Helen Keller, that Keller was a young child in the late 1800s. She was born deaf and blind, but with the help of her teacher, Annie Sullivan, Keller had a breakthrough in learning to spell out letters on the back of her hand. And back then, it was hailed as a miracle. Annie's biographer wrote, "Religions have been founded on less." Has it been lost, though, how significant of an achievement this was?
Well, it was certainly an achievement because she was the very first that had, accomplished this incredible feat of supposedly learning to communicate, formally learning to communicate despite her her condition, deafblindness. But I think, you know, most of us do know that story either from reading The Story of My Life in grade school or from the movie The Miracle Worker. But in both cases, it's more about Annie Sullivan, the miraculous teacher, and tends to reduce Helen Keller to a secondary character in her own story.
And in 1916, Keller wrote, "I was taught that God especially loves the poor and the weak," and she became a fierce advocate for racial justice and disability rights. Were you hoping to reframe her story by focusing on these lesser-known aspects of her life in this book?
That's the stuff that's been completely forgotten in history, or most people never heard about in the first place. She grows up in the postbellum South, where white supremacy is firmly entrenched, especially in Alabama, the most racist of all those southern states at the time, which had actually enshrined the words white supremacy in their state's constitution. And she fires a broadside. She sends a letter and a financial contribution to the NAACP in 1916, the fledgling NAACP, where she declares that she's ashamed in her soul to be a Southerner. It sort of struck me that she spends more time, she seems to get more worked up about anti-Black racism and anti-Semitism than she does about discrimination against people with disabilities.
Yeah, that's definitely a side of Helen Keller that a lot of people are not familiar with. Also, the fact that she was a strong supporter of socialist ideology. She even wrote a book called How I Became a Socialist during the height of the Red Scare and McCarthyism. The FBI began tracking her political activities. Now, what does this say about her, that despite all this scrutiny, that she stood by her beliefs?
Well, it's incredible, the sheer magnitude of these decades-long crusades against racism, against fascism during the 30s. She was one of just a handful of Americans that were targeted by the Germans. But Helen Keller spoke 6 languages, including German, so she was following the situation in Germany very carefully. And she spent the rest of the decade as a very outspoken opponent of Nazism, and she also supported the anti-fascist forces during the Spanish Civil War.
And finally, what are some of the lasting impacts that have benefited the disabled community in the U.S. as a result of her lifelong efforts?
She discovered very early on that most of the disability and blindness in America was caused by workplace accidents. So she started to link the roots of disability to capitalism. And she spent the rest of her life talking about systemic poverty. She traveled to dozens and dozens of countries talking about how systemic poverty is linked to disability. So she was this, 100 years ahead of her time, long before disability studies curriculums were talking about these issues and linking disability with gender, race, and class. She very briefly embraced eugenics. And that certainly cast a stain, a permanent stain on her legacy amongst some segments of the disability community.
Wow, Max,
she had her flaws, So one more piece of evidence that she was very much human. She's been cast as a secular saint, but she definitely had her flaws as well.
And you show us that we know little about a story that so many of us heard in our childhood as well. Max, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
After the Miracle, The Political Crusades of Helen Keller is available now wherever books are sold. And still to come, she's one of the greatest vocalists to ever live, and her legacy is still being celebrated. Celia Cruz's loved ones react to her making history 2 decades after her death.
Name, image, and likeness, or NIL. The 3 magic words that have upended the landscape of college sports as we've known it.
It's just the ability to make money through social media marketing.
It changed everything. My concern is, how is it handled?
Critics will say people like yourself are buying these athletes. I mean, what do you say to that?
Cashing in the debate over paying college athletes. Impact by Nightline. Now streaming on Hulu. With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television. Right now in America, with so much at stake, thank you for making ABC's This Week America's #1 news and politics show on Sunday mornings.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you? Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
20 years after her death, the queen of salsa, Celia Cruz, is making history once again, becoming the first Afro-Latina to be honored on the U.S. quarter. And now her nieces, Linda Pritchett and Celia Cota, along with celebrities that she's inspired, are sharing their reaction to the big news.
Celia Cruz was tia. That's Spanish for aunt. She really is a legend within our family. Finding out that she was going to be the first Afro-Latina on a U.S. quarter was stunning. She's a worldwide icon for all of the songs that she sang, her performances, just her vibrancy, her glamorousness. In my summers, we spent a lot of time in Miami, and she sang at local nightclubs, and I'm 10 years old, and I'm in the club, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you know. We traveled with her and experienced her performing and working. We almost grew up backstage at Madison Square Garden because they would always have the big salsa shows.
When I heard Celia Cruz is going to be the first Afro-Cuban woman to be featured on the U.S. quarter, I'm like, is this real? Pinch me. When I look at her, I see me. And, you know, it's not often for me, especially growing up, that I got to see a Black Latina, especially of Cuban descent, actually become as legendary. And now she's a stamp in history on the U.S. quarter. I'm like, yes, she did it for us.
In 2024, Celia Cruz will be the 4th among 5 women to be featured on the quarter. She was a trailblazer in music and in civil rights. There will be about 400 to 500 million Celia Cruz quarters distributed through the United States.
She opened that door for many Latinas like myself. It wasn't about how much skin she was showing. It was, I am talented enough. Hear me, watch me. Seeing una negra Latina on national TV made me feel that one day I could be her.
Celia Cruz heavily influenced the music industry because she has 60 years in the industry. She brought a lot of joy to not only Cubans, but all Hispanics and Latinos.
She had her tagline, she had azúcar. Azúcar. That's sugar. You know, that means like everything is sweet. Life is sweet. She was part of our household growing up. But she represented our culture and she infused African music to Latin music.
Celia has influenced me. She's always been part of my world, my environment. All the music that was in my house as a Dominican. My favorite all-time Celia Cruz song is Kimbara. Kimbara, kumbara, kumba, kimbamba. When that goes on, everybody floods to the dance floor. So many people, somewhere somebody saw Celia Cruz singing and said, I want to do that.
She impacted me in such a great, grand way that now I use that inspiration and that motivation to inspire the next generation through my music and through my activism.
Celia Cruz opened the door for a lot of artists, American and Latino. Jennifer Lopez, Cardi B, Mark Anthony. She was a trailblazer in her authentic style. I'm not surprised she's still relevant today. La Guarachera de Cuba, Celia Cruz was the queen of salsa. She was just an inspiration.
La Negra tiene tumbao. She's an inspiration to all. And that's our show for tonight. I'm Mona Kosar Abdi. ABC News Live is here for you all night with the latest news, context, and analysis. You can always find us on Hulu, the ABC News app, and of course, on abcnews.com.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of family.